this is where Indian soldiers, those who fought valiantly and laid down their lives in the First and the Second World War, their final resting place, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact at this cemetery, and this is where the Prime Minister is paying the homage to those fallen soldiers. Mohammad Ghazali, my colleague, joins us with more details on this. Mohammad Ghazali, you know, a solemn occasion as well, where the Prime Minister is paying homage to the fallen soldiers, the heroes, those who fought in the World War I and the World War II. You just give our viewers, you know, what else is happening there and what's the Prime Minister's picture now?
Yeah, so the Prime Minister will be arriving here at to pay homage to the memory of freedom fighter Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, who made a daring escape attempt at the port city, and that also is an attempt by the Prime Minister. And this trip shows the kind of connect India and France have historically for Indian soldiers also who died during the World War I and II. And this is another connect which our uses to strengthen ties with other countries, to historically prove that how not just with the kind of MOUs or diplomatic ties we have developed in the last few decades, but our relations are historically very rich. So that is the kind of connect which India is trying to project with soldiers here. And after that, the Prime Minister is also expected to visit another nuclear reactor kind of facility in France. So this is the day which is looking like the day scheduled for the Prime Minister looks like today when he is there on the last day of the trip in France. And before that, we had seen that how the Prime Minister attended the Forum summit and the AI summit, and how France gave that kind of recognition to India to invite them, Indian Prime Minister, to co-chair the AI summit. And therein, the Prime Minister also met a lot of CEOs of different companies. He spoke to them about how India has done has taken a leap when it comes to technological advancements, and how in the last 10 to 15 years, India has also kind of given a very conducive environment for investment from across the globe. Multiple companies have been coming in and investing in India, and this is all due to the result of these diplomatic visits, this diplomatic push by the Prime Minister and the Executive Ministry.
Mohammad Ghazali, thank you for joining us with all those details at this moment. We will slip into a very short break, ladies and gentlemen, and much more on the other side. Stay tuned.
Trump 2.0 in the White House. Prime Minister Modi amongst the first invitees. Recognition of a rising India. February 13th, Prime Minister Modi in the US. India-US Dostana, a force for good. Talks on ties, trade and tariffs. A dialogue of democracies.
हमारी मित्रता आगे बढ़ती चली जा रही है.
Deal, Dosti and Diplomacy. Live coverage on NDTV from Washington.
As India accelerates its growth towards self-reliance, India Inc. is leading the charge. From market dominance to manufacturing, from AI breakthroughs to disruptive innovations, India is setting the roadmap for a Viksit Bharat. Join us as business leaders, policymakers and ministers come together at the NDTV Profit Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat, February 18th, 10 a.m. onwards. Tune in only on the NDTV network.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge.
Right. Right, these now live visuals coming in of the arrival of the Prime Minister at the War Cemetery in Marseille, where Prime Minister is in fact going to pay the homage to the fallen Indian soldiers. Ladies and gentlemen, these are visuals coming in live at this moment from France, where Prime Minister has arrived at the cemetery. Now, remember, this is also the city where the second Indian consulate has been, in fact, opened, and right now you can see the President of France and Prime Minister Narendra Modi both, in fact, at the cemetery where the Prime Minister is going to pay homage to the fallen Indian soldiers. These soldiers fought in World War I and World War II. Just listen in at this moment to what's happening there.
Pardon.
Fought under the British Raj. They fought in the World War I and World War II. And this is where in Europe, in various battles, some of them in fact have been their final resting place here. You can see the flags of India and France along with the European Union there as well. The Prime Minister paying homage to the Indian soldiers. That's the wreath laying ceremony which is taking place at this moment. Prime Minister laying a wreath in remembrance of the soldiers. The wreath that Prime Minister has laid is also in the tricolour of India. These are visuals coming in from the cemetery where the Prime Minister is paying homage, and at this moment there is a minute of silence which is being observed at the cemetery. Those were the national anthems of India and France, both nations' national anthems also being played at this moment, ladies and gentlemen. And the Prime Minister and the President have laid the wreath and have also, in fact, paid their homage to the fallen Indian soldiers. The host nation's president, in fact, escorting the Prime Minister at this war cemetery where Indian soldiers, those who fought in World War I and World War II, have, in fact, their final resting place here in Marseille, France. Mohammad Ghazali is with me at this moment, my colleague who is continuing to give us more details as far as this entire story is concerned. Mohammad Ghazali, this tells you that the relationship between India and France, it's not an economic or a market-wise relationship, it's a very old relationship as well.
See, Ankit, Prime Minister Modi, as you rightly pointed out, this entire relationship, diplomatic relations between India and France is not just centered around the AI summit or the defense deals or the several MOUs, which later we will get to know about. It's also because the Prime Minister has made it what you can say a habit or routine, or it's part of his schedule that whenever he goes to a foreign country, he often tries to visit those memorials which have been established to commemorate the services of Indian soldiers during the World War. So not just this cemetery, this war cemetery in France, but Prime Minister had also visited during his previous trips to Australia. He had paid homage to the Indian soldiers back in November 2014 when he paid homage to martyrs at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. And later he did the same when he visited Egypt, he visited Mesopotamia. In 2015, he also visited another war memorial in France back in 2015. And back then, he became the first Indian Prime Minister to do so. And even today, when he's visiting this particular war memorial, Prime Minister is yet again bringing this to the fore, that how Indian soldiers had fought in World War I, in World War II. And the data suggests that perhaps 1.3 million Indian soldiers served abroad during World War I. And out of those, around 138,000 were deployed in Europe alone. And most of these soldiers and enlisted officers served in that particular area where this war memorial is established. And they have greatly served. And France also acknowledges the fact that how Indian origin soldiers or Indian soldiers in the pre-independent era were part of the World War I, they were part of the World War II as well. And their contribution is such that they had to set up this war memorial where the Prime Minister is now paying homage or is present there right now.
Right. We are also being joined by Colonel S. Dini, who is a defense analyst. Thank you for speaking to NDTV. We can see how the Prime Minister and the President right now, in fact, writing a note at this cemetery. Despite now, of course, a lot being written about India's contribution or Indian soldiers' fight as far as the World War I and II is concerned, but it's still something that is not very common as far as the masses are concerned, sir. I mean, in India, there is very less, education or enlightenment as far as our contribution to the World War I and World War II is concerned.
Oh, absolutely, Ankit. I think you're right there that not enough has been spoken about these soldiers whom all of us who have served and who are serving right now in the armed forces believe that these were our forefathers who actually, have given us the foundation on which the present armed forces are standing. If we are today a mighty army or armed forces, it is because of the sacrifices which these men had carried out during those World War I and World War II. And as Mohammad Ghazali rightly brought out, there were almost 1.3 million soldiers who had gone for World War I, and out of which almost 74,000 people had died. And you must always remember also, Ankit, that these soldiers who were going for the first time outside, they had never ever witnessed such a war. They never saw any machine guns or such like things. They never was experienced into a trench warfare or a tank warfare sort of a scenario. But yet, these people came out with flying colors. The sheer bravery which they displayed is what makes them special. And today, the whole world recognizes what they did. And if you go deep into the history, there are places in which Indians are looked upon in a very high order because of these soldiers. I remember there's a port in Italy wherein the Indian soldiers stood guard against the the invading raiders who had come to protect the women of that place. And later on, after many years, when an Indian ship was there, the entire town had come, and the mayor was there to receive them. And that mayor, whose mother told him about the story, that it was because of the Indian soldiers that we were protected. So I think it is not only the courage, it also is the character what stood out as far as the Indian soldiers go. And you are absolutely right that not enough has been said about them, not enough has been written about them. And it's very good to see the Honorable Prime Minister taking every opportunity to bring this fact not only to the world's attention, but I think more importantly to ourselves.
Yes.
That these were the people who has fought for what we are today.
How do you see, gestures like these, in bridging that gap, not only between people to people, but also in defense ties, like militaries and their histories, when people understand the sacrifices that people have given in another country? You're not fighting on your own soil, you're fighting to save somebody else that you have is absolutely no relation to. That does in fact present some sort of a history that can help today, of course, when we are trying to build a collective future.
Yes, Ankit, almost all military forces across the globe, they give a lot of importance to the legacy which they have, whether it is any armed forces. They believe that whatever they did in the past, it means a lot to them. So similarly, when in India, Indian soldiers who have fought in France, when these soldiers, the French soldiers, are seeing that, these are the people who came in World War I and World War II, fought in a different land, fought for something which was actually not directly involved, they had nothing to do with it.
Absolutely.
But because they fought for the flag, there's something that professionalism is what matters. They fought for the flag of their battalion, or the Pulton as it was called, and that professionalism actually would be respected by all professional armies. So you're right in the sense that these kind of gestures definitely go in a long way in understanding the armed forces cultures of each other, and definitely in future scenario, whenever there's a joint exercises or otherwise, I think it will be a great advantage.
Right, we are playing those visuals of this entire visit of the Prime Minister at this war memorial, the cemetery where fallen Indian soldiers, their final resting place, people, many thousands of kilometers away from their homeland, fought in Europe, as Colonel Dini was telling us, something which was not directly impacting India at that point of time, but of course they fought because armies fight on orders, for the Pulton, for the flag. Colonel Dini, let me very quickly also ask from you if you could tell our viewers in Marseille, of course, this cemetery for the fallen Indian soldiers, but there are some very important spots in and around Europe, not just in France, but in many other countries as well, where Indian soldiers played a defining role in World War I and II.
Absolutely, not only in France, Ankit, in Mesopotamia, like what Mohammad Ghazali was mentioning, in Egypt, in Australia, of course in Africa. There are so many places where Indian troops have gone, and it's very difficult to think that these soldiers were going abroad on a mission for the first time, and as I mentioned, they had no clue, or they have never had any such experiences. But in different terrains, in different situations, different operational conditions, they could operate, and I think their bravery and, as I mentioned earlier, their character stood out. So I think there's so many stories there, so many things which are yet to come out, and I'm sure in the coming days there are already people who are interested in it, and by each such gestures, more and more stories will come out of what the Indian armed forces or the Indian soldiers did in foreign lands.
Minister visiting these places regularly whenever he goes to any of these kind of countries where there have been battlegrounds and contribution to India, if the Prime Minister goes there, not only does it increases the awareness, but how do you see that impacting people back home? I mean, it also gives that new light which many people would not have known, that this is also a place where Indian soldiers gave up their blood and life for.
Absolutely, Ankit. See, we must understand when the Prime Minister of a country goes there, and especially a person like Mr. Modi, when he goes, the whole media is there. The people are now looking into that, where has Mr. Modi gone? So therefore, their interest is there. The awareness comes in, and also people will start reading about it, knowing about it, and then they will understand the legacy, what I was speaking of earlier. So I think what the Honorable Prime Minister has done is not only a gesture that which, of course, it's very thoughtful and appropriate, but I think he's also trying to, bring in more awareness. I think, like I mentioned earlier, more within our country. Our country, there are, instances when we forget what we are, whether it is military or whether it is our culture or other such like things. But here, by this visit, there are people, and as I know today, there are many students of military history who are now, looking into these war. The various operations which Indian armed forces or Indian soldiers have participated. They're now studying on it. They're carrying out research on it. There are a lot of YouTube people, influencers who are now speaking about it.
Yes.
And therefore, gradually, I think we will see a change.
Can I also understand from you, sir, in context of this visit of the Prime Minister to France, this is also a very important development vis-a-vis the India-France defense cooperation as well. There is much more on the cards in terms of the Rafale jets and the submarines as well. How important do you see both these countries as partners?
See, one thing is very clear, Ankit. I think France has always been one of our, most trustworthy, and I would say a constant strategic partner, no matter what the kind of geopolitical situation in which India was. So I think in that way, I think France has been a very strong ally of India, but yet they never used to overplay it. There are other countries which, used to show that they are very strategically close to India, and they used to say it. But France has, I think, always throughout, it's not only now, throughout, France has stood by us, whether it was during Kargil and before that and all those. Of course, now with this Rafale thing, again, we knew that what are the conditions in which the Rafale deal was signed. It was signed when in China and India, we were having a situation along the line of actual control. So in that time also, France stood by us. Of course, France has been helping us through the submarines. So multiple times we have seen France as an ally has been constant. They have been, trustworthy, and also they go by what they say. It is not that they are influenced by other situations or other as I put it, whether other restrictions imposed by other countries. So that way, I think France and India are a very strong partners in today's geopolitical situation. And I think from this visit, it has been taken further ahead, as we have seen that the Prime Minister is the co-chair with the artificial intelligence part of it, which actually brings the future also being that much more secure between both those countries.
So stay on with me. I have to slip into a very short break. We are taking a break, and coming back, we leave you with these visuals, ladies and gentlemen, of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in fact, paying homage at this cemetery to the fallen Indian soldiers, meeting in Marseille, where he was escorted by the President of France, Emmanuel Macron.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Edge 50 Pro, world's first AI-powered pro-grade camera.
Big budget day. Big newsmakers on NDTV. Top ministers and opposition leaders.
ये by the people, of the people and for the people budget.
It is a fulfilling budget.
This is a development budget.
It's one of the finest budgets I've ever seen.
More than a bold move, it is a clever move.
NDTV, always the first choice of newsmakers. NDTV keeps you ahead. Mahakumbh, a festival of faith. The world's biggest spiritual festival. The divine dip at the spiritual Sangam. A sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025. Trump 2.0 in the White House. Prime Minister Modi amongst the first invitees. Recognition of a rising India. February 13th, Prime Minister Modi in the US. India-US Dostana, a force for good. Talks on ties, trade and tariffs. A dialogue of democracies.
हमारी मित्रता आगे बढ़ती चली जा रही है.
Deal, dosti and diplomacy. Live coverage on NDTV from Washington.
As India accelerates its growth towards self-reliance, India Inc. is leading the charge. From market dominance to manufacturing, from AI breakthroughs to disruptive innovations, India is setting the roadmap for a Viksit Bharat. Join us as business leaders, policymakers and ministers come together at the NDTV Profit Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat, February 18th, 10 a.m. onwards. Tune in only on the NDTV network.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Misha.
Big Budget Day. Big newsmakers on NDTV. Top ministers and opposition leaders.
ये by the people, of the people and for the people budget.
It is a fulfilling budget.
This is a development budget.
It's one of the finest budgets I've ever seen.
More than a bold move, it is a clever move.
NDTV, always the first choice of newsmaker. NDTV keeps you ahead. Mahakumbh, a festival of faith. The big budget.
The cemetery for the fallen soldiers of World War I, World War II, where Indians in fact fought valiantly. Prime Minister Modi and President of France, Emmanuel Macron, would be going to inaugurate the consulate at Marseille, the second consulate of India in France. These visuals just a short while back when both the leaders were at the cemetery where the national anthem was played for both the countries, and also Prime Minister and President Macron in fact paid the wreath after the wreath laying ceremony, also paid their homage to the soldiers. It's been a very important visit, ladies and gentlemen, between India and France, and of course Prime Minister's personal relationship between the bonhomie that he shares, the warmth that he shares with the head of the states of many countries, including President of France. It helps India in a long way to try and paper over a lot of issues that would have been very, very difficult. So it helps the negotiations between both the countries. It's an important visit, not only in perspective of the AI, but also in the bilateral relations between India and France, where important sectors like defense and also in the civil nuclear energy use, all those things are on the cards as far as both these countries are concerned. We are slipping into a short break. Coming back, stay tuned.
Our Prime Minister, amongst the first leaders of the world community of the International Committee of Nations, to be arriving here to meet Mr. Trump, who has obviously got a very resounding mandate this time round.
The significance is it's a continuation of the stronger U.S.-India relationship that we've been seeing.
Partnership be seen as the strongest possible between India and the United States.
There are a lot of issues. There is a lot of things on the platter for Modi ji also and Mr. Trump also to solve this.
This is Nikunj Gar reporting from Washington, D.C. for NDTV.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola Edge 50 Pro. World's first AI-powered pro-grade camera.
Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025. Trump 2.0 in the White House. Prime Minister Modi amongst the first invitees. Recognition of a rising India. February 13th, Prime Minister Modi in the US. India-US Dostana, a force for good.
Prime Minister Modi and President of France, Emmanuel Macron there. In fact, I think this is the consulate opening at Marseille, the second consulate in a city of France. Both the leaders meeting, it seems the Indian diaspora are there. Some of them, in fact, getting autographs of both the leaders there. Quite a sizable Indian crowd with flags in their hands. Welcoming the Prime Minister and the President, and all these people have been waiting. This has become quite synonymous with the world tours of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Wherever he goes, a sizable amount of Indian crowd does in fact come there to show their appreciation for the Prime Minister. And now, of course, we are also seeing the President of France along with the Prime Minister at this occasion. Mohammad Ghazali, my colleague, is with us at this moment on the phone line. Mohammad Ghazali, these visuals have become quite synonymous with Prime Minister's visit. A lot of Indian diaspora there welcoming both the leaders, also getting some autographs from the head of the states of two important countries in the world.
Yes, certainly, and he is also inaugurating that consulate, new Indian consulate in France, and that kind of shows two things. One, that we are deepening our ties, and for that effect we are also very serious, and that is why the Indian Prime Minister himself is there to inaugurate that consulate. Second, the presence of Indian diaspora, that has been our part of our soft diplomacy, because in many countries, not just in France, but in many developing and developed countries, Indian diaspora has contributed immensely in every sector. And whenever Prime Minister pays visit to those countries, this has become a part of his schedule, that he addresses them, he meets them, and even before his arrival, the kind of you see the kind of celebration is expressed or is displayed there by the Indian community is very visible. This is exactly what we're witnessing here in France as well, that before the Indian Prime Minister was to inaugurate this consulate, the Indian diaspora was already there. They are still there. You can see those visuals, that how they're really excited, they're really eager to even have to shake hand with the Prime Minister, waving at him. That shows the kind of connect India intends to build with France beyond the usual MOUs, the usual business ties, the usual defense ties we have with France.
Ghazali, they're reporting on the Prime Minister's visit to France. And Ghazali, if you could tell us more about, so far yesterday we saw the AI summit, now a different aspect of the Prime Minister's visit. If you could take viewers who are just tuning in through what has been happening today.
So yesterday we saw that how Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, was there at the AI summit. That was one part of the summit wherein France had invited India, had invited Mr. Modi as the co-chair, India being the co-chair of that AI summit. And after that, Indian Prime Minister, after addressing the summit, also managed with Mr. Macron to sit with CEOs of many companies, many multinational companies, wherein Indian Prime Minister spoke about that how India has become a ground for or a place where new investment is coming in from different sectors. And likewise, what we saw in the recent visit of Prime Minister to Singapore, the way he spoke to all the CEOs, they're telling them that in the last 1 decade or so, under his party's rule, under his government in India has made a lot of advancement, and that makes it a perfect ground for investors to come in and sort of invest in India. So this was yet another opportunity for the Prime Minister to sort of show that how India is a perfect spot, perfect location for investors to come. And he also spoke about India and France, as they are not just linked by democratic values, but the foundation of India and France's friendship is based on the spirit of deep trust, innovation and public welfare. And Prime Minister also spoke that how both the countries are not just joining hands to resolve issues between them, but India and France are cooperating together to address the global problems and challenges. And Prime Minister spoke about that how during his previous visit to France, India and France had outlined the 2047 roadmap for the partnership between the two countries. And Prime Minister also spoke to the company CEO, saying that many of you are already present in India and have been working in different areas like aerospace, ports, defense, electronics, dairy, chemicals, and consumer goods. But Prime Minister spoke about that the path of reform, perform, and transform. India is the 5th largest economy in the world, and it is the fastest growing major economy in the world.
For our viewers, to tell them what's happening right now, the second embassy there, this is being inaugurated on this 2-day visit. So the Prime Minister inaugurating the second consulate in the port city of Marseille. Also, the Prime Minister paying homage to soldiers who were killed in the First and Second World Wars. Remember, many Indian soldiers fought for Britain during that time, and so that too was something highlighted during the Prime Minister's visit just now, alongside President Macron, the second consulate there being inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi. And Ghazali, if you could tell us, the need for this second consulate in this port city.
Certainly, because the Indian diaspora has been increasing and the services in different cities were needed, and that is exactly why this consulate has been added or has been opened in another city of France. And this is also because, if you remember, in this budget, the union budget which was passed recently in the parliament, the MEA's External Affairs Ministry's budget has been increased, and in that particular budget, the consulate services budget allocated for the consulate services was also increased as compared to the last year. And that is why you will see this coming up not just in France, but wherever India finds that the diaspora is increasing, there is a need for better and smooth services. India is focusing on streamlining these processes by opening more consulates and also deploying more people there.
That's right, and we can see those crowds, Indians who live in Marseille, as we saw in Paris here as well. Many of them have gathered and are cheering the Prime Minister as that consulate has been inaugurated. Tell us more, Ghazali, of the Prime Minister's, interactions before he arrived here in Marseille.
See, today is the last day of his 3-day visit, and if we just talk about today's program, then before opening the second consulate in the country, Prime Minister has already just managed to pay the homage to soldiers who died in First and Second World Wars at one of the war cemeteries. And now Prime Minister Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron will also take a tour of the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor Project. This is an international nuclear fusion collaboration, so this is also very significant. After the consulate consulate inaugural ceremony now, which we're seeing right now. The Prime Minister and Mr. Macron, the French President, they both will take a tour of this international thermonuclear experimental reactor project. This project is very significant considering the nuclear fusion collaboration, or to say that in nuclear energy sector there is collaboration between India and France, and that is why Prime Minister's visit will also outline what India's progress has been made in this particular sector when it comes to collaboration with not just another country, but even within India.
Right, and an agreement also for small nuclear reactors in India. That is something that here is on the Prime Minister's, visit. During this visit, one of the, the things that India is hoping is hoping for. So the Prime Minister hoping, and a declaration for modular nuclear reactors, which is very significant, Ghazali, for our own energy needs here in India, and especially to get that technical know-how and assistance in establishing of these small modular nuclear reactors.
ITER project was first agreed upon by the United States, European Union, Russia, China, India, and South Korea at one of the summits in Paris in 2006, and today there are more than 30 countries collaborating on the effect. And what this project aims to do is to master nuclear fusion, a process that occurs naturally in the sun and all stars, but it is difficult to replicate on Earth. So if harnessed, this nuclear fusion would provide a virtually limitless form of energy that, unlike fossil fuels, emits zero greenhouse gases, and unlike the nuclear fission power used today, produces no long-life radioactive waste. So what this, in simpler terms, what we can believe that this ITER project, for which the site where the Prime Minister will be visiting in some time from now, we will see that how India's energy sector, the focus on energy sector has been very significant in the last few years. Wherever Prime Minister, if we talk about the MOU when it comes to the energy sector, this would be one significant visit of Prime Minister to when he will be visiting this nuclear reactor project site in France with Emmanuel Macron. Because here we can expect that as India is diversifying its partners when it comes to energy needs, even in this trip in France, we are expecting some kind of MOUs when it comes to nuclear energy or in wider scope broadly in the energy sector.
That's right. Also, Ghazali, as the Prime Minister arrived in Marseille, he also spoke of a freedom fighter, Veer Savarkar, and the significance that Marseille has for him. That entire episode when he jumped out of a British ship and actually swam to the French, to Marseille, in fact, where he was then taken by the French authorities. So the Prime Minister really, talking about that incident, and we have seen that the BJP has been, promoting Veer Savarkar. We can expect reactions from the opposition as well. But tell us a bit about the Prime Minister's post where he spoke about the significance of Marseille and freedom fighter Veer Savarkar.
See, Prime Minister visited this war cemetery in France today, in Marseille, and the cemetery contains a memorial that honors the memory of Indian soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice while defending foreign lands during the world wars. And as a tribute to their valor and sacrifice, Prime Minister and French President Mr. Emmanuel Macron visited that cemetery and reaffirming the deep historical ties between India and France. But this is also not a surprise that Prime Minister has been a staunch proponent of giving due respect to soldiers, especially those whose sacrifices may have been forgotten over the years since they laid down their lives far away from the motherland. So before even visiting this particular cemetery today, Prime Minister has made it a point to visit any such cemetery on foreign land. Like when he visited Australia in November 2014, Prime Minister paid homage to martyrs at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. At that particular memorial, it was reported that he presented the Man Singh Trophy, a prized possession of Sikh regiment battalions, to his Australian counterpart, Tony Abbott. Similarly, when in April 2015, Prime Minister paid homage to Indian soldiers at the World War I Memorial in France. That's another memorial which is based in France. So he, back then, 2015, like around 10 years ago, he became the first Indian Prime Minister to do so. Sorry.
All right, Ghazali, there we can see the Prime Minister and President Macron. They're interacting with the Indian crowd that has come, the Indian origin crowd who have come there to meet with the Prime Minister. They're holding the Tiranga as well. So really a lot of bonhomie, a lot of this interaction is on display. I think the Prime Minister there signing something as well. A lot of children also have been brought by their parents to meet with Prime Minister Modi, or at least see him. So this is really the last leg of the Prime Minister's visit to France, and after this he does leave for the United States. It's been quite a packed visit, Ghazali, over these last 3 days. Lots of events, lots has been done by the Prime Minister during his visit to France. For viewers tuning in, if you could take us through the Prime Minister's visit so far. It started with the summit on artificial intelligence, which India was actually hosting along with France, and much discussion around AI and its significance in the world and for the future, in terms of employment, in terms of what can be achieved, also in terms of ethics around AI. And now today the Prime Minister there in Marseille before he leaves for the United States. Ghazali, if you could take us through the Prime Minister's visit to France.
The very first day after his visit, we saw that how Prime Minister met Mr. Macron, and not just Mr. Macron, he also met U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance as well, and his Indian origin wife, along with the two sons, on the sidelines of AI Action Summit. The Prime Minister was seen holding bilateral talks with Mr. Vance. Also, the Prime Minister yesterday, when the actual summit started, Prime Minister spoke twice in the summit, initially with his inaugural remarks and then in his concluding remarks. And after that particular summit, Prime Minister also attended yesterday India-France CEO summit. That is when Prime Minister spoke about that how India has made a great advancement when it comes to technologies and many other sectors where a lot of foreign countries are already working in India, and Prime Minister invited many more. But the entire trip of this 3-day, like today, the Prime Minister has visited this war cemetery, then he has inaugurated this second consulate in France, and after that he is also expected to visit that nuclear project-related site, which we are reporting right now. And this is also, if you see diplomatically, this is very significant that it's more of a precursor towards the big trip, which is which everyone is waiting for, when the Prime Minister will be visiting United States after departing from here today, and he will be meeting Donald Trump in the next couple of days. So this particular trip sends out a very strong message in two terms, not just diplomatically, that how India and France are engaged in different sectors. We have MOUs, we have deeper connections in different sectors when it comes to trade ties and investment, and also the Make in India campaign, which he started long back during his first tenure as Prime Minister. Even that had kicked off with multinational companies and companies from different countries having contributed, having invested, and having set it, they have set up their businesses in India. So that kind of push was much expected from this trip, and this is exactly what he has said during his address yesterday in the CEO summit, in the AI Action Summit. And after that, his first interaction with the U.S. Vice President is certainly you can say, precursor to the big meeting which is happening on 13th and 14th with Donald Trump.
That's right. Of course, we will be covering that the visit, and we've been talking about the key issues that are likely to come up when the Prime Minister goes to the United States. One of the earliest visits by an Indian Prime Minister in any U.S. president's term. Remember, Donald Trump has not even completed a month, and the Prime Minister will be going there to meet with him. But let's come back to France, where you can see a lot of, there you can see the kind of relationship that the Prime Minister shares with the President Macron. That is something that has been, much spoken about, isn't it, Ghazali? And we've only seen more of that on display from the time the Prime Minister arrived and the hosting of the AI Summit to now with this second consulate being inaugurated in Marseille, and earlier the visit to the fallen soldier cemetery for the fallen soldiers, Indians who had participated in World War I and World War II. Remember, there across Europe there are many such cemeteries which have been covered quite extensively on NDTV as well, and the Indian contribution to these world wars at a time when we were under British rule. The Prime Minister visiting those cemeteries, and Ghazali, after the inauguration of this new consulate in Marseille, now will be the visit to the civil nuclear reactor. If you could tell us a bit about that.
See, this ITER project is what Indian Prime Minister will be visiting after this inauguration of what we call this new consulate there. And this would be his first visit to this particular nuclear reactor site, or what we call the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor site. Now, in simpler terms, we can say that this is one of those sites from where France is working on harnessing nuclear energy for global good. Now, this particular visit reinforces India's position as an important partner in the global endeavor to develop clean nuclear fusion energy. And France's, this particular center in France is the largest energy research site in Europe. It's hosting 19 basic nuclear installations, including reactors, waste stockpiling and recycling facilities, biotechnology facilities, and solar platforms. And it is actually presently under construction and is expected to create its first plasma in the coming years. So, in a nutshell, we can say that Prime Minister's visit also shows the kind of push he is giving to India's efforts and investment and contribution clean energy, towards clean energy, and also for global good. So even if you connect, if you want to see a connect between this particular visit, which is going to take after the consulate visit, what he spoke in AI Action Summit, both have a similar theme, that no matter emerging technologies in any sector, be it energy sector or be it in technical sector, India is aiming, or what Prime Minister is aiming at, is to push or send out a message that any emerging technology in any particular sector has to be harnessed or has to be utilized for larger good of the society. That is why this entire theme of AI Action Summit was also about global governance, also about how to serve humankind through the emerging technologies. So this particular nuclear reactor site, what we ITER, is the place from where Prime Minister may issue a statement as well. Many list of outcomes have to be shared by the government, that what actually happened in the bilateral talks between India and France. And besides defense and energy sector, we can expect many more outcomes during this 3-day visit of Prime Minister.
All right, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with all those details of the Prime Minister's visit. This is the third and last day of the Prime Minister's visit to France. There on your screens, you can see visuals from a short while ago when President Macron and Prime Minister Modi together inaugurated the new consulate in Marseille, the second consulate, and this is really a symbol of deepening ties between India and France, and Marseille is a port city, very important for trade as well. So a second consulate has been opened there. As we said, today is the Prime Minister's third day, and after this, really the last leg of his visit to France. On the first day, the Prime Minister attended the AI Summit, which India was also a co-host of along with France. Today, he arrived in Marseille, where he also visited the war cemetery, where he paid homage to soldiers who died in the First and Second World Wars, Indian soldiers who lost their lives, fallen soldiers who participated in and fought in the World War I and World War II. So the Prime Minister earlier paid homage to the fallen soldier, then the inauguration of the consulate in Marseille, and after this they will take a tour of the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor project, which is an international nuclear fusion collaboration. India is looking at France for cooperation for small thermonuclear plants. Well, we'll slip into a short break and continue to track the Prime Minister's visit there in France.
Hello, Moto.
मोबाइल फोन किसी भी ब्रांड का काम का तब होता है जब उसमें NDTV का ऐप हो।
जब अपना फोन किसी को दो तो NDTV ऐप के अलावा बाकी सब डिलीट कर देना।
नहीं तो क्या सियापा होता है, जानने के लिए देखिए हमारी स्वीट लव स्टोरी लव यापा आपके नजदीकी सिनेमा घरों में।
तुम अपना फोन एक दिन के लिए बानी को दोगे और बानी तुम अपना फोन एक दिन के लिए गौरव को दोगे।
और न्यूज के लिए कीप वॉचिंग NDTV.
हर 2 साल में फोन बदले जाते हैं गुच्ची।
NDTV ऐप नहीं।
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
Big budget day. Big newsmakers on NDTV. Top ministers and opposition leaders.
ये by the people, of the people and for the people budget.
It is a fulfilling budget.
This is a development budget.
It's one of the finest budgets I've ever seen.
More than a bold move, it is a clever move.
NDTV, always the first choice of newsmakers. NDTV keeps you ahead. Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip and the spiritual sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025. Trump 2.0 in the White House. Prime Minister Modi amongst the first invitees. Recognition of a rising India. February 13th, Prime Minister Modi in the US. India-US Dostana, a force for good. Talks on ties, trade and tariffs. A dialogue of democracies.
हमारी मित्रता आगे बढ़ती चली जा रही है.
Deal, dosti and diplomacy. Live coverage on NDTV from Washington.
As India accelerates its growth towards self-reliance, India Inc. is leading the charge. From market dominance to manufacturing, from AI breakthroughs to disruptive innovations, India is setting the roadmap for a Viksit Bharat. Join us as business leaders, policymakers and ministers come together at the NDTV Profit Conclave 2025. The blue
Hello. I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of
Welcome back. Prime Minister Modi is in France. Today is the last day of his 3-day visit to France, and following this, he will be proceeding then to the United States. At the invitation of President Donald Trump, this visit will further strengthen India's global partnership with a particular focus on technology, defense and economic cooperation. The two leaders are expected to discuss a range of strategic issues, including trade policies, defense cooperation and global security challenges, and also expected to propose tariff cuts and increased energy and defense imports during the meeting with the US President. The Prime Minister will be keen to avert a potential trade war and also boost trade ties after President Trump threatened reciprocal tariffs on many countries, though not on India. Now, NDTV's Nikunj Garg is there in Washington, D.C., and earlier my colleague Ankit spoke with him on the significance of the Prime Minister's visit.
Let me go across to my colleague Nikunj Garg, who is joining us at this moment from Washington, D.C. Nikunj, thanks for being with us. Let me start by asking you, Prime Minister Modi is the fourth world leader to meet the president in this second inning. How significant is this, in fact, for the relationship between India and US?
Well, yes, that proposition certainly is reflective of the not only the strength that the Indo-US relationship carries, but also the fact that how consequential this relationship has become for the entire Capitol Hill. Remember, in the last 2 decades or so, there has not been a single administration on the Capitol Hill in the White House that has thought any lightly of the Indo-US relationship. Almost all the administrations, right from the time Prime Minister Vajpayee took those nano steps of transforming the landscape of Indo-US relationship, have been extremely serious about the nature of this relationship, about the consequence of this relationship. And look, who has President Trump been meeting since the time? It's not been not been a month since he has been inaugurated, and he has been meeting allies, old American allies like Jordan, like Egypt, like Israel, and all of them under a contingency. So that's a contingency plan of the administration where there is a situation contingent upon the United States, contingent upon the president himself. But when it comes to India, there is no contingency here. It's just the sheer strength of the relationship and the personal bonhomie. Let's not overlook the fact of the personal rapport and the personal bonhomie between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi that brings the strength to this relationship, the additional strength. In fact, I was talking to a ranking diplomat yesterday in Washington, D.C., and he told me that he does not remember a single occasion, which means that panning back to somewhere around 90s, he does not remember a single occasion where the apex of the political Indian leadership has been invited. And look, all these meetings do not happen at the behest of someone. These happen at the invitation of the host country, particularly when that country happens to be the United States of America. So in the 30 years or so that he could recall, that top-ranking diplomat on the DC, he says that he does not recall a single occasion when the apex of the Indian political leadership has been invited to Washington, D.C., to the White House so very quickly. So quite clearly, it reflects the strength of the relationship. It reflects the personal chemistry between the two leadership. It reflects the consequential nature of this relationship, Indo-US relationship between the two most consequential democracies in the world in the global arena. So the entire gamut of that relationship and its strength can certainly not be overlooked.
But Nikunj, there are a host of issues to deal with, from the threatening, trade tariff to the migration issue, where, what do you think the Indian side will lay the focus on?
Well, yes, there would be issues, and when you are dealing with nearly 1/4 of the humanity between the United States and India, we cover nearly 1/4 of the humanity. More critically, nearly half of the populations living under the democracies in the world. These are the two most important democracies in the world, the largest, the biggest, and the strongest. There would obviously be a whole host of issues ranging from trade, tariff, tech transfer, migration, both illegal and legal, and then the emerging world of the AI, from where the Prime Minister is also actually coming to Washington, D.C. after co-chairing that all-important AI summit in Paris, in France. So there would obviously be issues. But do remember one thing, that when there is personal chemistry, when the consequential nature of the relationship is evident to successive leaderships across the capitals, and when there is the growing realization of India's stature in the International Committee of Nations, the rightful place that India must occupy in the coming century at the international high table, and wide, broad-based, across the globe recognition of India's growing stature under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, then you don't have to worry too much about small, slender issues, thorny issues on the side. What is important is that the key issues the issues relating to people. Remember, you can have all the tech transfer, you can have all the technology in the world, and this is a capital. Remember, Washington, D.C. is a capital that can actually make you available the kind of capital and the kind of technology that you need to bring out a large swath of your population from out of poverty. A critical mission for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Repeatedly, he points to the fact that under his successive administrations, nearly 25 crore people have been pulled out of poverty, and that is India's new emerging middle class. In fact, a bedrock of emerging prosperity for the global community of nations too, those 25 crore people. So you can have all of that, the tech transfers and the access to the financial capital that Washington, D.C. can ensure for you. But what is most important for democracies and will always remain most important and critical for democracies, that would be the centerpiece of the relationship, and that is people. So when it comes to people, the issues related to H-1B visas, social security, allowance, the right of allowance to work to their spouses, the H-1B visas holder, migration, both of legal and illegal nature from India's side, and from the American side also people-to-people contact. Those issues will remain extremely critical. You may say that in the terms of overall strength, they may occupy a slender space or not the center space, so to say. But being the democracies that both countries are, being the most vibrant democracies, most prosperous and most pulsating democracies that they are, people-to-people issues would occupy the center stage, and India would certainly wish to push the people-to-people case much, much harder than many people outside would imagine and would think that tech transfer, capital and technology would remain the focus of this deal.
About the Prime Minister's US visit and expectations from there, but the Prime Minister currently still in France, and let's get you the latest on his visit. And this is really the last leg of the Prime Minister's France visit. Earlier today he visited War Cemetery and paid homage to Indian soldiers who participated in World War I and World War II, and also inaugurated the new consulate. Let's just listen into what's taking place. Well, let's go across to Ghazali. Ghazali, so tell us what is happening now as the Prime Minister is in Marseille. Earlier we saw them inaugurating the second Indian consulate in France, and this is before the visit to the thermonuclear reactor?
No, this is not a nuclear reactor site. It is some other logistical center which is on the way to that nuclear reactor project site. And Prime Minister is right there with the French President, Mr. Macron. Mr. Dr. Jaishankar is also there. French Foreign Minister is also around. This is one of those logistical centers, the details of which is not available yet. And Prime Minister will, after from this particular spot, later go to that nuclear energy reactor project site later.
All right, we can see some sort of, interaction there happening, and perhaps there was, some description of, what takes place at this logistics center. This is the Prime Minister's final day of his France visit, the third day, and it's been quite a packed day in Ghazali, starting with as the Prime Minister landed in Marseille and visiting the War Cemetery, then the inauguration of the consulate, now this visit to a logistics center, and then the visit where he'll take a tour of the international thermonuclear reactor project.
Don't need to say that.
Okay, but they would like, and India would be great. And we operate many services from India to the US and to Europe, where we can also deploy US flag, Indian flag ships with
My ambassador will keep in touch with your office and will get the details. As soon as we get the details,
all right, but we were trying to, listen in to what was going on at the logistics center, some sort of demonstration, presentation being made to the world leaders, and the Prime Minister there also asking some questions regarding the logistics center. This is before, after this, the Prime Minister and President Macron will be taking a tour of the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor Project, which is an international nuclear fusion collaboration. So that really is the last thing, so to speak, on the agenda of Prime Minister's trip to France. Today, the Prime Minister has had a very packed day, as we've been mentioning, in Marseille, where he visited the War Cemetery. There was also the inauguration of India's second consulate in France, and that was inaugurated by the President Macron and the Prime Minister together. We saw them also interacting with the Indian diaspora that was there, and they had come to cheer the opening of a second consulate. And now the Prime Minister at a logistics center where some sort of a demonstration has been made, a presentation has been made for them. Well, let's go back to Ghazali for more on the Prime Minister's visit. Ghazali, so if you could take us through, what's happening. Also, this is the third and final day of the Prime Minister's France visit.
This entire city of Marseille is the gateway and also one of the port city, which is part of the IMEC corridor, the India, Middle East, European corridor, which starts from India, goes towards Middle East, and from there via Greece, it also opens up towards Europe. Now, Indian Prime Minister is at that particular spot where he's being briefed about that how this city will serve as a key point for the IMEC corridor. Now, IMEC corridor, as we all know, was conceptualized in the G20 summit when India was hosting it, and it also happens to be one of the key projects for this particular government because it entails that how India will be cooperating across the globe with multiple countries who have been signatory to this IMEC corridor. Now, this entire corridor was jeopardized, or say that the initiation of the project for this corridor or the construction of the first leg of the corridor has not yet started because of the war in the Middle East. And perhaps Prime Minister is right now in that particular city, which will be a part of this project, and hence the briefing and the details and the logistical companies who are involved in this entire project are showing that how this particular city will also serve as a gateway for this IMEC corridor project, which has emerged as a very promising project, connectivity project, not just for India, not just for Middle East, but India, Middle East, and some parts of Europe as well.
All right. Well, there we can see the map, really, as you were describing, Ghazali, of the IME corridor, which is a key economic corridor, which has been planned, but as Ghazali said, due to the troubles in Western Asia so far, it hasn't, no work has begun on this, but Marseille being
difficult to say because there are so many places in this Western India, Western part of the world.
Because we will be able to save around 10 to 15 days if we use the rail versus going by sea through this Suez Canal.
वहाँ से बन चुका है.
So today we go through the Suez Canal. This will be much faster.
All right, so the Prime Minister, they're being briefed about the IME corridor and and Marseille as a very key and important port city of France, how it will be a part of this corridor that has been envisioned. It's going to involve railways and roads as well as ships. So there'll be port to railways, back to port, back to road, etc. That's how this entire corridor between Asia and Middle East and then Europe. So India, Middle East, Europe is this corridor that has been spoken of, and Marseille is a key port city that will play a role when this does eventually become a reality. So the Prime Minister there being briefed about Marseille and its place really in this very key economic corridor that has been envisioned by world leaders between India through the Middle East and then to Europe. This was spoken about, remember, in India during earlier at one of the big international events, and now the briefing taking place. This is the third day of the Prime Minister's visit to France. He's currently at this logistics center where he was shown a presentation on this key economic corridor that has been planned. It's a logistics center, and the Prime Minister there asking some questions also regarding this corridor. Well, let's go back to Ghazali now for more. And Ghazali, this is a very, important and very ambitious corridor, economic corridor that has been planned, which involves roads, railways and ships, from India through Middle East into Europe, and the Prime Minister there receiving a briefing.
See, this entire project serves two purposes. One, that India having opened its consulate in this particular city also shows that India will be in touch or will be monitoring this project's development in France as well. Marseille and Mumbai will be the two ends of this corridor, this India Middle East European corridor, and talks on the corridor will be has been on high on the agenda of this particular trip. And a joint statement from India and France, both sides have confirmed that how IMEC corridor, France in this particular project has been very significant. It goes on top of the agenda for this particular meet, and Mumbai and Marseille will be the two ends of the corridor, and also it shows the kind of connect India will have all on this project. It is very important connectivity project which has been reiterated by our foreign minister, our prime minister, almost on all the diplomatic visits across Europe and Middle East, because India will start this connectivity project from its end, from its own end in Indian territory for Mumbai, and then it goes through Saudi Arabia via Dubai, Jordan, it passes through Middle East. It will and see, this is a very big challenge for India to operate this entire corridor, bypassing Iran, bypassing Pakistan and its immediate neighbors, and directly getting into Middle East by bypassing these two nations. And also this entire India Middle East European corridor also bypasses some of the key Middle Eastern nations, or particularly Turkey and Egypt. So it's a very ambitious project, conceptualized by India and other Western nations, but due to the conflict in Middle East, things are put on back burner. But now with ceasefire happening in these two regions, especially in Middle East, as well as talks by U.S. President of also establishing or sort of achieving a ceasefire in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, it particularly seems that India has its task cut out. And that is why, if you see the visuals, both the Prime Minister Modi and his counterpart, Mr. Macron, are being briefed about that how France will be very active, or how France will contribute to the project. France is the only country which has also appointed a very special envoy for this IMEC corridor project, which passes through the city of Marseille there.
All right, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with those details. So the Prime Minister, they're being briefed, as Ghazali was telling us, on this economic corridor plan, and which begins from port city of Mumbai to and ends at port city of Marseille, where the Prime Minister is. Before this, we saw the inauguration of the second consulate in France in Marseille by President Macron and Prime Minister Modi, and after this, the visit to the nuclear reactor project. So this is the Prime Minister's final leg of his France visit, and from here on to the United States, where he will be meeting with Donald Trump, and we'll continue to get you all the latest on that. We'll slip into a short break. More news coming up on the other side.
Big budget day. Big newsmakers on NDTV. Top ministers and opposition leaders.
ये by the people, of the people and for the people budget.
It is a fulfilling budget.
This is a development budget.
It's one of the finest budgets I've ever seen.
More than a bold move, it is a clever move.
NDTV, always the first choice of newsmakers. NDTV keeps you ahead. Mahakumbh, the festival of faith, the world's biggest spiritual festival, the divine dip at the spiritual Sangam, a sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025. Trump 2.0 in the White House. Prime Minister Modi amongst the first invitees. Recognition of a rising India. February 13th, Prime Minister Modi in the US. India-US Dostana, a force for good. Talks on ties, trade and tariffs. A dialogue of democracies.
हमारी मित्रता आगे बढ़ती चली जा रही है.
Deal, dosti and diplomacy. Live coverage on NDTV from Washington.
As India accelerates its growth towards self-reliance, India Inc. is leading the charge. From market dominance to manufacturing, from AI breakthroughs to disruptive innovations, India is setting the roadmap for a Viksit Bharat. Join us as business leaders, policymakers and ministers come together at the NDTV Profit Conclave 2025, the blueprint for Viksit Bharat, February 18th, 10 a.m. onwards. Tune in only on the NDTV network.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.